Hello, and welcome to this centennial celebration of the Woodhaven Library. My name is Ed Wendell. I'm with the Woodhaven Cultural and Historical Society, and we were very, very honored to be asked to come and make a presentation to members of the library on this really historic occasion. Today, Sunday, January 7th, is actually the 100th anniversary of the day it opened on a Monday, January 7th, back in 1924. But they celebrated the opening of it 2 days earlier on a Saturday, so it was only fitting that the library would celebrate also on a Saturday. And as it was back in 1924, there was a tremendous turnout from the community to come out and celebrate this occasion. You can see there this was held in the basement of the library. There was events all over. There was events upstairs and everything. This was just downstairs, and we came on after Nick the Balloonatic, and he did a great job making balloons, and it was a very, very young audience, and with parents in there mixed in with some of our locals and some of our regulars at our meetings, and we were very happy and honored to be asked to attend and to give a presentation. And for me, it was a special honor because the Woodhaven Library has really been part of my entire life. Um, I this is the first book I ever read. I got my library card when I was probably about uh, 7 or 8 years old, I guess. And my mom took me in where all the kids' books were and says, look for a book to read. And this is the one I found, and because it had my name in the title, I chose that one, and I read it. It was the first book I ever read to the finish, and I it opened up a whole new world for me of reading. There were other books in the series, and I read that, and then I just started reading other series and other books, and I have been reading ever since, my entire life. Um, I'm not going to mention how old I am, but old enough. and and uh, and there it is. There's a beautiful 1940s picture of the Woodhaven Library there, looking very much like it did when I was a kid, and it's just a great place and a great part of our community, and it was a real honor to be there with so many young people because it was a part of. There was a lot of people there that have been members of the library 40, 50 years, like myself and others, and it was really nice to be around so many young kids because they're the next generation. They're who we're handing this off to, this beautiful library, and they'll be there for the 150th anniversary of the library, and they'll remember this day. It was a great day. Anyway, let's take a look at the founding of the library here and kind of the conditions of Woodhaven in those days. You can see this is a map of Woodhaven, 1902, and this is a really interesting era in Woodhaven because it was you'll see over the next 20 years a lot more building up of the neighborhood. And this map here, you can still see there's a lot of big empty spaces that have yet to be developed in Woodhaven. And to put this into context, you see that star up there. That's where the Woodhaven Library ends up. So it's actually right in the middle of a lot of the building up of Woodhaven that's going to be done over the next 20-25 years. Here's a picture of Woodhaven in 1910 to give you an idea where this is. The house at the bottom is the one that has that first house number sign that you see there. Most of you are familiar with that up on Park Lane South. And this sign has caused confusion to some people over the years because if you look at it, it says the first house number in Queens on house opposite here. A lot of people think that means there was a house across the street there, but no, it was the sign that was across the street. So that's the wording on that. That sign has been moved since, but it's a beautiful house, and if you look behind it and around it, that's all 85th Street. 86th Street, etc. You see it's still empty, like we saw in the maps there. So there was a lot of development in those years of Woodhaven, and a lot of change, and a lot of the things that we all grew up with, like the library, is going to be built up in this time. So we're going to have a number of centennials over the next couple of years. We had one last year with Mary Whalen Playground over at 79th Street, that the former Lot Avenue playground. That playground there, we had a celebration there last June for its 100th birthday. So, as with any growing community, there are going to be things that they need, and one of the things that Woodhaven wanted was a library. So, a small branch was opened up in Brooklyn Manor, and the Brooklyn Manor part of Woodhaven is everything that's kind of east of Woodhaven Boulevard. Over on that side, there was a Brooklyn Manor train station. And you can see that picture on top right there. That's Woodhaven Boulevard. This house over here on the left, you may all recognize. That's still on Woodhaven Boulevard. And on the right there, you see a sign there for Brooklyn Manor. So they opened up a branch in Brooklyn Manor, and it was a traveling station. And I haven't really pinned down exactly what it is, except it sounds just like it is. It was mobile. Maybe it was on a cart or something, but it moved from place to place. There was no permanent station for it. But probably because of this, the circulation at the Manor branch was the lowest in Queens. So the residents of Woodhaven had been told, "Hey, you better increase the circulation, otherwise we'll never consider your neighborhood for a library." So what they did was they sent letters to all the schools and churches and all the different clubs and civic organizations, and they encouraged everybody, especially children, to use the library. And they told them, "Hey, go get your neighbors, go get your friends, go get anybody you can, and tell them to take out a book from the library." They had to increase their circulation, and the effort was successful, very, very successful. So successful, in fact, that in 1911, Queensboro Library opened up a branch at 1229 Jamaica Avenue. Now, this is in the days before they started giving street numbers like we're familiar with. That was Dennington Avenue, right there in Jamaica Avenue. Dennington Avenue later on became 88th Street. And this was the site of the first Woodhaven Library. They had a really great picture on the wall. I snuck a picture of it yesterday of the library there on Dennington Avenue, of the library there. You can see in the window there. And what's interesting about it is you notice the beautiful shade, the awning to shade the sun from the window. In the previous picture, you notice they've got the shades down, halfway. And there it is. There's the original Woodhaven Library, and that location today is our Kentucky Fried Chicken. And so you can really impress people if you're down there and you're in Kentucky Fried Chicken. You can tell someone waiting online. You can say, "Hey, this used to be the first library in Woodhaven." They'll be super impressed with your knowledge of Woodhaven history. So this is Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it's really interesting when you look back at the picture and you look back. This is 100 years ago, and then you look at this again, and you remember before we were talking about the awning in this picture, the shade rather. You got the shade right here, and then before that you've got the awning, right, and the shade, and why would they need that then? If we remember, there's no train, there's no L train here, there's no elevated train. So they were getting the full force of the sun all day long. So they needed that awning. They needed that shade pulled. Whereas Kentucky Fried Chicken, look at it. It's in the shade. It's in the shade already from the train. But this also is a good picture to kind of illustrate something that we always tell people at our meetings. That's always look up. Always look up. If you look at the designs on buildings and things, you can see how they don't change. These are the things that don't change over the years. And what Jamaica Avenue in Woodhaven is really good at, and is that every building, even the connecting buildings, most of the times their designs and their patterns are different from each other. It's not like you go to one block and it's all the same. No, they're different as you go. So if you always look up, it makes it easy identifying those details in the pictures 100 years apart. Here's a kind of an oddly worded headline from 1917, but basically the neighborhood of Woodhaven needed and started pushing for a library. And it was 1912 that the Joint School and Library Committee of Woodhaven is formed, and they would be influential for a number of years. They were pushing for better schools, better, a library. Pushing for a real library was one of their big things. They had the one on Dennington Avenue, but it was small, and members of every civic group in Woodhaven took part in this, and they were led by the Homestead Civic Association, which no longer exists. But it's sort of like the Woodhaven Residents Block Association. It was an organization of residents that spoke out on concerns for the neighborhood. But you also had the Woodhaven Citizens Committee, and you had American Legion Post 118, which still is in operation to this day. Celebrated their own 100th anniversary just a couple of years ago. And what they do is they spend several years working really hard to get what is called as a Carnegie Library. And many of you, maybe when you're hearing about the anniversary of the library, you heard that phrase, Carnegie Library. So let's just take a quick look at what that is. It's named after Andrew Carnegie. He was born in Scotland and came to America when he was 12 years old. He started as a telegrapher. You see in the old movies when they're sending messages through the telegraph. He invested in railroads, and then he founded Carnegie Steel Company. That's obviously a lot more to it than that right there, but that's just a real, just quick bullet point. He founded a steel company, and he became very, very rich. And then when he sold it to J.P. Morgan in 1901, he became the richest American of all time. I mean, it was an amazing amount of money that he had. And for the next 18 years of his life, the rest of his life, basically, he gave a tremendous amount of it away. He gave away around $350 million. And you got to remember, that's money in those days, nearly $6 billion in today's money. That's how much he gave away. Now, he had a real affinity for libraries. When he grew up, where he grew up in Scotland, that's where Dunfermline, Scotland, where he grew up there, he didn't have a library when he was growing up. So that was the first one that he had built with this money. But from there, he just had this foundation, and areas could apply for the money. And you can see here, over 2,500 Carnegie libraries were built between 1883, he had started giving money away early, and 1929 in 47 U.S. states and 9 countries. He really built a lot of libraries, and by the time the last library was built in 1929, half the libraries in the United States were Carnegie libraries. Half. So I mean, this was there was a tremendous act of philanthropy, and because of that, we have a library here in Woodhaven. So they get approved for a Carnegie library, but unfortunately, it gets delayed a bit due to World War I. They found a location in 1920 at the corner of Shipley Street and Forest Parkway. Remember, it was that map I showed you, how empty it was. Well, Shipley Street is one of those streets. It's now 85th Drive and Forest Parkway. You could see it there. And the library would go on the left where there's an empty lot we can't really see in this picture. And it was placed on Forest Parkway. As Forest Parkway it was kind of like the main road in Woodhaven, right? It was the showcase road. They've got big homes there, and it was the widest street. And it's a very historic street. We've done whole presentations just on Forest Parkway. There's a lot on there to unpack and discuss. And did you know that Forest Parkway starts at Jamaica Avenue, but it actually ends in Forest Park? A lot of people think it ends at Park Lane South, but it actually continues up into Forest Park and ends right outside the old golf clubhouse. Today, that's known as Oak Ridge. That's where the administrative offices for Forest Park are. The big, old, beautiful building in there. People rent it out for wedding receptions and stuff. It's very, very nice. But then the road changes there, and it becomes Forest Park Drive, and continues into Glendale, or around to the right, and you go to the Bandshell and Carousel, the parking lot, and all that. That's Forest Parkway. So that's that. Now the plans are made. That you've got that they're planning for it. They've picked a location, and then here they pick an architect, Robert Shermer, and this is an architect who actually lives in Woodhaven, and he was a well-known architect. And you can see that the building's going to be a brick and stone, 70 by 32 feet on a plot, 100 by 100, and there'll be room for 22,000 volumes in the structure. Robert Shermer is also the architect who designed St. Matthew's, today All Saints Episcopal on 96th Street. That's the church that's in front of the Wyckoff Snedeker Cemetery. And Shermer, like I said, he was a Woodhaven resident. He was a member of this church, and he was the architect who did the library and did All Saints. That's an interesting little bit of trivia there. So in 1922, ground is broken at Shipley Street on Forest Parkway at the site, and they're going to lay the cornerstone of the library. And Mayor Hyland says there, Mayor Hyland will officiate at the ceremony. Things are really getting close. And here's from the Leader Observer. This is Woodhaven's first look at the library. This is how they saw it for the first time. It was an artist rendering in the newspaper. And there it is, and it looks very similar to what it looks like what it looks like today. You would certainly recognize it. The picture itself looks a little kind of squeezed in, whereas the library actually is spread out a little bit more, and the center part that comes out as it does in this drawing, it doesn't quite come out that far. So there's a description of it. Brick and stone, 70 by 32 feet, 100 by 100 plot. Contain a reading room, 70 by 32, with a mezzanine for storage and a lecture room in the basement. The lecture room in the basement is where we were 100 years after this place opened. And there'll be room for 22,000 books, volumes in the new building. 22,000. And then it says here, this is the last of the Carnegie buildings to be erected in Queens, since there'll be no more funds left of the amount allotted for the library buildings after this building is erected. So this was the last of the Carnegie money for libraries in Queens that was allotted for it. Well, that's why Woodhaven was fighting so hard for it, because they didn't want to lose it. So here we have the Woodhaven Library opens, a fine new library. And the ceremony was held on Saturday, January 5th, 1924. The final cost was $94,000. And you can see that's $1,700,000 in money today. The Queensborough president, Maurice Connolly, was there, and he praised the residents of Woodhaven. You can see there for their zealous participation in the campaign, which culminated in the opening of one of the finest buildings of its kind in the state. It was a big deal. It was a big deal when it opened, and the residents of Woodhaven were really responsible for it. It shows you what can happen when all the residents, really pull together. There we go. 200 people attended the ceremony, and 300 walked through the new building afterwards. So a lot of people came to the ceremony and walked through it. That's what we were talking to the crowd yesterday. Think about it. 100 years ago, all these people streaming through here and seeing it for the first time. And all the books from the Dennington Avenue, 88th Street, Kentucky Fried Chicken, they were all brought over to the new building, and they had an additional $3,000 for purchasing new books. And the $3,000 in those days would go a long way to getting a lot of new books. And then finally, the Woodhaven Library opens Monday, January 7th, 1924, 100 years ago today. And there's our Woodhaven Library as we're used to seeing it. A beautiful library, and I'm sure many of you are like myself, got your start reading at the Woodhaven Library. Here's a 1940s tax photo of the Woodhaven Library that's been colorized. Looks really pretty. Been a nice sunny day there. You can see the shadows of the trees there, nice and bright. We thank you for joining us. Everyone who came out yesterday, thank you. God bless. It was great to be part of it. And for everyone here on this listening to this recording, if you made it to this point, really appreciate it, and hope to see you at one of our future Zoom presentations. Bye bye.